Okay, from our metta circle, let us go into chapter 12. Everything is a formation. The 12 links of interdependent arising and their extinction are also not separate self-entities. Thich Nhat Hahn is writing to bring clarity to Buddhist teachings that some of us may not be familiar with. And I find the challenge that some of us have felt reading The Other Shore is that, well, for myself, I'm reaching to familiarize myself with certain teachings at the same time as trying to understand the clarity that Thich Nhat Hahn wishes to bring to those teachings. And then I also have to reflect on the teachings that I was raised with in order to apply the clarity to my own life. And so it's a deep complexity of layers when attempting to take in this information. I realize that those of us raised in first world countries were educated with a strong sense of materialism. The earth was inanimate and the world was filled with inanimate things, and there was strong emphasis on both separate self-existence and the sense of permanence, which do not reflect reality. And so there's a lot that we're unlayering here. I was also raised with the Christian ideas of one lifetime, which would determine an eternal afterlife of either going to heaven or going to hell. And there was a step I felt liberated when I started considering reincarnation and ongoing participation in the evolution of life. And then, when I heard my friend Marian Naranjo from the Pueblo speak about the indigenous perspective that this life on earth was heaven, that earth was their heaven, I felt like a shock go through my whole system. It was like hearing her speak of heaven on earth revealed, like that I still cling to similar formations of thought as are portrayed in these 12 links, which create samsāra. I was actually viewing earth as an endless cycle of suffering based on ignorance. And I experience a similar shock when I read Thich Nhat Hahn saying that Buddhism does not maintain there is an immortal soul. And so there's all these different happenings going on. But I believe what is outlined on The Other Shore is a practice designated to penetrate these largely unconscious mental formations which create our reality, and to be able to apply the Buddhist examination and inquiry to recognize the conditions which give rise to limiting formations and the conditions which give rise to liberating states of consciousness. So in this chapter, Thich Nhat Hahn is addressing the 12 links or nidānas. And the nidānas describe the chain of causation in which the cycle of death and rebirth, known as samsāra, is created. And while I was working to penetrate these teachings, I found an article in the Lion's Roar by Francesca Fremantle called "What Turns the Wheel of Life?" And I wanted to read just a couple paragraphs that I felt were sort of foundational for me in this material. She says, the Buddha described the worldly phenomena as having three characteristics: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. The key to the Buddha's realization and teaching is the understanding of causality, because it is only when we know the cause of something that we can truly bring it to an end and prevent it from arising again. In his search for the origin of suffering, the Buddha found that he had to go back to the very beginning, to the very first flicker of self-awareness. In his spiritual practice, the Buddha always went further and further, never satisfied with the states of knowledge, peace, and bliss that he attained under the guidance of his teachers. He always wanted to know their cause, to see what lay beyond. In this way, he surpassed his teachers and eventually attained his great awakening. She says, the Buddha awoke to a state of perfect enlightenment, which he described as deathless, unborn, and unchanging. If it were not for that, he said, there could be no escape from birth and death, impermanence, and suffering. There is indeed a condition of ultimate peace, bliss, knowledge, and freedom. But to reach it, we must first understand the cycle of conditioned existence in which we are imprisoned. Samsāra is like a sickness. The Buddha, who was called the great physician, offers a cure, but the patient must recognize the illness with its causes, its symptoms, and its effects before the cure can begin. So that gave me kind of an insight into what we are studying. And I sense that we are each searching to not only recognize and understand the causality and suffering of the world, but to live in a way which will shift it. And so we too, are wanting to be great physicians. So what can we discover in this chapter? Everything is a formation. He's clarifying the teachings on the 12 links. He says that the traditional way of presenting the 12 links, or nidānas, aims to explain reincarnation and rebirth, but does not help us touch the ultimate dimension. He says these teachings belong to the category of conventional truth and not in accord with the deepest teachings of Buddhism. And so I thought about that, and this statement could allow us to dismiss the teachings on the 12 nidānas, but I really started to find great wisdom and insight embedded in them, which can guide us to understand this cycle of conditioned existence in which we are imprisoned. So I thought we would go ahead and take a moment to go through them. They're on page 86 in the book, if anybody wants to look at them. The cycle begins with delusion or ignorance, which gives rise to wrong action and wrong impulses, the kind of energy that is blind and will bring suffering. And when I reflected on that, I was really thinking, in this first movement of the wheel, I found myself realizing how much we are born not knowing things and not understanding, and how much of human actions are based on ignorance and delusion. And then the second nidāna is, because of our action, there is consciousness. And I was like, wow, okay. It was pretty rich to contemplate consciousness arising out of our actions and our interactions with the world. And the next link states, based on consciousness, there will be body and mind. Wow, I was like, yeah, there's a lot there in relationship to our body and mind being formed out of consciousness, which arises either out of ignorance or out of wisdom, is what he's pointing out in this chapter. And because we have body and mind, we have 6 sense organs and their objects. And because we have the sense organs, we have contact or touch. And reflecting on how we were looking at those last time we were together, I really was feeling how that contact and touch are channels of communication. And because of this contact, there will be feelings. And I thought, wow, okay. I realized that in myself, when I need to minimize feeling, I do withdraw from contact. And then when I want stimulus, I move towards contact. And so there's like these underlying truths. But it goes on to say that because there is feeling, there is craving. And because we have craving, we grasp. And when I was reflecting on this, I was thinking, okay, our craving and grasping is very clear inside of physical addiction. But I was thinking we also grasp toward a better life, whatever a better life means to us. And that we also crave and grasp understanding. And here we are, we are being moved through life by our desire to understand. So the wheel goes on saying, grasping brings existence into being. And because there is being, we have to be born and suffer samsāra, the cycle of reincarnation. And because we are born, we have to grow old and die. And it doesn't say this, but because we die, I assume it's why we have to be reborn. So what Thich Nhat Hahn wanted to do is point out two different shortcomings he sees in the traditional interpretation of the 12 links and their explanation of samsāra in relationship. He drew it, the first one, in relationship to action, the second link. And I had to look up the word samsāra. I wasn't familiar with it. And some of the meaning I found was deep impressions and conditions arising from actions. And that it was mentioned that the impressions we receive from the actions of the adults from our childhood are particularly strong. And they form the thread of continuation, I was seeing, of our familiar and cultural lineages. And they form the consciousness that we end up living inside of. And so this is what we're looking at and dismantling, so to speak. The way Thich Nhat Hahn defined samsāra was as a formation, a composite or compounded phenomena. He says that when people want to use the 12 links as a way to explain rebirth, they interpret samsāra as meaning karma, the action of body, speech, and mind that impel us into another life. There is so much here. I was really taken by the actions of body, speech, and mind, the actions of our speech and the actions of our mind. And, as children, we absorb this really deeply from the people around us. And what I think he's pointing to here, he didn't say this exactly, but I think he's pointing to this idea of the cycling of one life is that it holds the idea of separate self-identity in place. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward as a possibility. But the Buddha, he says, used samsāra to describe the formation of what we perceive in the world, which I'm assuming are the collective formations. So it's bringing us back from singularity into the collective. He goes on to emphasize that everything is a formation. Suffering, happiness, anger, the Buddha, a cloud, a tree, all are formations. And interdependent arising describes the manifestation of formations. He's saying that all things arise in mutual dependence on one another as a result of the coming together of many causes and conditions. And it's within dependence that things arise. And this got me into reflecting on Thich Nhat Hanh's life and how powerful an example he provided of perceiving and then acting in right relationship to the conditions which he was seeing gave rise to the formation of the Vietnamese War. And he traveled the world to speak to people, to political leaders, to ministers, to everybody he could find who were acting from the ignorance that was causing the war. And he sought to illuminate the blindness which was causing great suffering, both to the Vietnamese people and to all who were engaged in the war. And the second shortcoming of the traditional teaching of these 12 links is that it leads us to identify our 5 skandhas as the cause of craving, grasping, and attachment to being. It implies that because we have consciousness, a body, mind, 6 sense organs, contact, and feeling, that we have craving. But he asks us to look at the Buddha, or a Buddha, he says. A Buddha also has consciousness, body and mind, 6 sense organs, contact, and feelings. And a Buddha can be without craving. When a Buddha sees suffering, she gives rise to the energies of mindfulness and concentration, and allows herself to be touched by what is around her in a way that allows compassion and loving kindness to come forth. So to say that contact and feelings can only bring craving and grasping is not true. We cannot blame our bodies and minds for our afflictions. Our 5 skandhas can bring enlightenment, understanding, and love. It is a shortcoming of traditional presentation to blame suffering on being. We suffer not because of being, but because of the notions of being and non-being. He says we are either afraid of being or we're afraid of non-being, which I found interesting. And whenever we're afraid, we go right into single self. We leave the state of connectedness. So he says contact and feelings can bring either craving and aversion or compassion and freedom. It depends on how we use our sense organs. He goes on to say that the Heart Sutra reminds us that the links are not separate self-entities. Rather than being a progression, they intercause each other. They all arise together in dependence upon one another. When one is there, the others are there as well. The extinction of one of the links is with the extinction of all the other links. He says, delusion does not come into being and disappear on its own. Delusion is extinguished when we no longer see formations as separate entities. So this whole piece of the non-separate self-entities is so key. He says, when the links in this wheel cease to manifest, the links arising from wisdom and leading to ultimate truth can manifest. So he says, if you do not live in delusion, you see formations as they really are, and you don't see both birth and death anymore. Not seeing in terms of birth and death, you are no longer caught in the notions of being and non-being. You are no longer in samsāra, you are in nirvana, the extinction of all notions. And so I will just end with that, and with the appreciation for the simplification of the 12 links, where he also teaches them as 5, which is on page 90. And he shows how the 5 links arise through delusion and how the 5 links arise through wisdom, leading either to the cycling or to nirvana.